Media Tackle for another week. This is your host, Dr. Craig Norris, talking about everything in and around the world of media, popular culture, entertainment, odd things that come across my desk. It's my great pleasure to have two guests on today's show. Master Honours Johnson Marcus. I put your surname first, which...
Look, I mean, that makes it easier
Marcus.
to find me in like a library or something.
Yeah, almost alliteration. If it was Master Marcus Johnson. Actually, the M's work. Master Honours Marcus.
You'd have to go Honours Johnson, so it's going in alphabetical order.
That's right. So I'm joined by Master Honours Marcus Johnson. Bit of a limerick. And my second guest, Bachelor Zeke Gaffney.
Yeah, I'm jealous of all your titles, to be honest, but I have one.
Yeah.
Don't be jealous. That's 5.5 years of my life I'm never getting back.
Yeah, there is a sacrifice that comes with it. But...
They're rookie numbers. As Dr. Craig Norris, I can say those are rookie numbers. You know, you gotta layer in almost double digits to the amount of time you've been institutionalized in education space.
I've got a friend who's been working on his PhD for about 9 years now. His honours, his supervisors still haven't marked it, and he's actually started a Master of Teaching because he's sick of waiting for it to get finished.
Just roll on to the next letters next to your name.
The next adventure.
Yes. And in a way, you're continuing your institutionalization as now a teacher. When I was describing how best to introduce you, Marcus, you said MC, trivia host, teacher, and corrupter of the next generation.
Absolutely. I've got a bunch of... I'm a high school teacher, and I have a bunch of young anime fans in my class who all wanted to read the new shonen manga like Demon Slayer and Attack on Titan and My Hero Academia and Jujutsu Kaisen during silent reading. And I went, well, you know what? It's actually a lot cheaper for me to buy you guys older shonen manga because I can get 3 for the price of 1. And so now they're reading Dragon Ball and Rurouni Kenshin in those 3-for-1 omnibuses that they've got, and they are loving them.
Wow. So are you bringing that in as like reading time during class?
Yep.
Or...
Silent
Wow.
reading, 15 minutes at the start of every single English lesson while I figure out what we are doing for that day's lesson. I like to live dangerously.
Yeah, no, well, it's the Toyota model of car making, right? Just in time, delivery just as needed to get the car made. It's a good model.
There was one kid who handed in an assignment during reporting time, literally 2 hours before the reports had to be printed. I said to him, so what you've done is like every time Indiana Jones rolls under a descending stone door and then reaches through to grab his hat and bring that through, that's what you've done proverbially. So congratulations, but please get it in earlier next time.
And you can imagine the dopamine that's coming out of the system as you're finally completing that task. What is it? This is probably a lot of adrenaline. Probably caffeine in the system. So adrenaline driving that fear of the deadline, dopamine for the successful handing in of the assignment. It's an emotional roller coaster.
That's certainly how I felt in putting his marks into the system, but I don't know how he felt when he was finishing it off.
Yeah, I think there's so much to unpack here. And Zeke, you mentioned aspiring radio host. You're learning from the best today.
That's right, that's why I'm here, to see the man in action. I was right, it's still called Media Tackle. I thought it was Media Mothership.
Well, yeah, so where Media Tackle's Media Mothership is part of my branding is still Media Tackle. So if you're listening on Twitch and YouTube, we're still badged Media Tackle. But I've realized that I'm not really tackling media anymore. I'm more, I feel myself as part of the mothership. Well, not me as the mothership. I feel like I'm actually... like an alien mothership beaming me on board. I feel like I'm stuck in the tractor beam of the mothership of media. As I'm unpacking media phenomena, it has that kind of... Did any of those words make sense?
I'm just imagining the opening sequence of your TV show being like the reverse of Mr. Bean, where instead of getting beamed down from the sky, you get beamed up into it.
Yes! Yeah. So yeah, that... And I'm workshopping it, so... Yeah, we'll see. But thank you, Zeke. Yeah, we're in a transition state, which I think is very media mothershipping of it. Many people, when I've said media mothership, have said that's very retro nostalgia. Because I guess there's like the punk parliament, mothership parliament. Was there a funk band?
Honestly, for me, it just makes me think of Linkara, the comic book reviewer, who's or Angry Joe, those former Channel Awesome reviewers, who have a spaceship that they CGI themselves into as their set every week.
Good segue on comic books. So the first story I want to chat about with my brains trust, I don't know, the critical mass of the masters and bachelors here, is the little came out last year news that Superman's motto gets a modern update with truth, justice, and a better tomorrow. We all know the original. Was it the original statement? It was certainly in the TV show. I remember hearing truth, justice, and the American way.
Well, as the article goes on to say, it was Stephen Colbert was defending the change, or at least the article that I read about it. And he was defending it, saying that the original motto, he said a bunch of other things, but he said that the original motto wasn't truth, justice, and the American way. That, in fact, came from a radio or a TV show. Yeah, something like that. And then they just brought it over because of the success, I'd imagine.
I think it is the 1948 film serial.
Must be that. Yeah, I
there
think
it
it's
is.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I've got from Google, which is always correct about everything.
Yeah, I mean, and looking at the transmedia adaptation of Superman, it's fascinating how the comic original is a very much draft version of what the Superman is today. We know that if you're thinking of the mothership, the media mothership of Superman, you think of the original comic. It came out, what was it, like pre-World War II, I want to say, like late 30s?
Yeah, 37 or 38, Action Comics 1.
And in that one, he just leapt over tall buildings, right?
Yes, the reason why he can fly is because when the Fleischer brothers made their animated movies in the early 1940s for theatrical release, they basically realized that him leaping tall buildings in a single bound looks fine on a comic book, but when it's animated, it looks really silly. So he flies serendipitously because they couldn't figure out a way to animate it that didn't look stupid, and they incorporated that into the comics.
Yeah. So limitations of the platform really creating the necessity to have him fly, which now is stock standard. You can't really imagine Superman without flying. So on that thing of can you imagine Superman, the loss of the American way has set up some debates and controversy back last year. So reading from the CNN article, they say truth, justice, and a better tomorrow is the new motto, which we're living in today. And it's a change that was announced last year by DC Chief Creative Officer and Publisher Jim Lee. And this was, during DC's convention, the Fandome. And this is Jim Lee's statement here, to better reflect the storylines that we are telling across DC and to honor Superman's incredible legacy of over 80 years of building a better world, Superman's motto is evolving. Superman has long been a symbol of hope who inspires people, and it is that optimism and hope that powers him forward with this new mission statement of a better tomorrow. The article goes on to point out that this isn't the first time recent comics have edited the American way part of Superman's motto. First edition of Superman, Son of Kal-El, which featured the son of Lois Lane and Clark Kent, this is the character John, as the new Superman, which was published in July. John states that he stands for truth, justice, and a better world. So Saturday's announcement back then last year establishes a more canonical change for the classic motto linked to Clark Kent's Superman. Even though fans may associate American Way catchphrase with comics, as we were pointing out, the phrase actually goes back to Superman's transition to radio in the 1940s and TV in the 1950s. So another guy that they interviewed in this article talked about how when the radio show made its debut during World War II, we were all fighting for the American way, so why shouldn't Superman? Yeah, right. So that Truth, Justice, and the American Way was born out of World War II, where there was, nationalist propaganda talking about how America should join World War II, then did join World War II, and we're fighting to protect the American way of life. And that was part of the general propaganda of the entertainment industry, which Superman was also part of. So they labeled it up then as Truth, Justice, and the American Way for the patriotic World War II audience, but it stuck until recently. Decades. So then they talk about the 2006 movie Superman Returns, You guys seen that? The 2006 one, kind of a spiritual successor to.
Never really bothered with it, just because very few people who saw it had many positive things to say about it, so I just gave it a bit of a wide berth.
Yeah, well, I guess the interesting thing about the 2006 one, because that had Kevin Spacey as Lex Luthor, was that it had been so long between Superman movies. I guess previous to that you had the last Christopher Reeve one, which was very lukewarm reception. So in the 2006 movie, Daily Planet editor Perry White asks about Superman, who's come back after a long absence. Does he still stand for truth, justice, and all that stuff? So they'd even dropped it in 2006 as American Way. They just referred to it as all that stuff. So compared to all that stuff, A Better Tomorrow does sound better than saying...
Yeah, when I hear about it tomorrow, I just really hope he starts walking around with like cool shades and matchstick in his mouth and a long duster like Chow Yun-Fat does in A Better Tomorrow.
That is deep cut, Marcus. And for those playing along at home for obscure Hong Kong cinema references, that film is from Better Tomorrow, right?
1987. Yeah, the first collaboration between John Woo and Chow Yun-Fat. The first time John Woo found a creative way to kill him off at the end.
Yeah. Yeah, right.
Because he loves killing Chow Yun-Fat.
Again, deep cut. Thank you, Marcus.
Sorry for the spoilers. Sorry for spoilers for a 35-year-old movie.
So the other point about Superman's changing identity is that the new motto isn't the only change the Superman universe has seen in the last year. As it was also announced last year that John Kent, that's the son of Lois and Clark Kent, is bisexual. And in the 5th issue, which came out last year, John Kent, in canonical, I guess, in that issue, confirmed his sexuality after falling for Jay Nakamura, a male reporter. So yeah, it's taken a number of changes to that Superman identity.
And it's interesting that that John Kent's love interest is a Japanese-American man, given you mentioned before the
World War II.
Yeah, there was a lot of anti-Japanese rhetoric and propaganda in Superman comics of that era.
Yeah, you watch those Fleischer cartoons, and there is just layer upon layer of anti-Japanese.
Not the Fleischer ones. The Fleischer ones were apolitical. It was the
ones.
So. The studio that succeeded them. So Fleischer did the first 9. The latter 8 were done by Famous Studios. Famous Studios are the ones that put all the anti-Japanese rhetoric in there. And then there's also the I think my favorite, air quotes, favorite cover from that era is I think it was an ad for war bonds saying Superman and Batman need you to buy war bonds to stop the Japan Nazis. It's like, yes, no, Japan Nazi, this is definitely a thing that people say.
Look, it's amazing, isn't it? Because it does feel like it was a different world where you had the Nazis as the enemies, you had Superman being defined as the defender of America, truth, justice, and the American way. And so this story is interesting because it's kind of saying how we've moved past that nationalist propaganda, and now Superman is a symbol for world harmony, right? That it's for a better tomorrow, it's for a much bigger vision than simply this nationalistic narrative. Because the other story linked to Superman was from a week or two ago, talking about the satirical superhero series The Boys, and the character there of Homelander, who's a parody of a Superman-type figure. So The Boys, for those who haven't seen it, is streaming on Amazon, and it's a very violent, highly dialed up to 11 gore piece of television, which asks this question: what if we did a hyper-realistic story of superheroes in today's world, and the type of hyper-violence that might lead society to normalizing? So this has your kind of surrogates for the whole Justice League within The Boys. So The Boys are these kind of like non-superhero figures that are trying to seek revenge and police the excesses of the superhero degeneracy which is occurring, right? And they have this wonderful public face to them. The superhero figures in this universe have this kind of PR multinational corporation that has built and cultivated the superheroes. So the figure of Homelander is really interesting because he's, in the previous season, it turns out that his girlfriend was, in fact, a kind of immortal Nazi from World War II. They'd been rebadged. So they'd had these kind of loose references to the kind of right-wing fascism that's sometimes within the superhero mythology. But what this article is really interesting at pointing out is that why the superhero satire The Boys turned off its right-wing fan base. Because it turned out there was an audience for The Boys, and the Homelander character in particular, who's a really obnoxious, kind of egotistical Superman figure that's incredibly overpowered. But they were reading him as an aspirational figure, that he's a source of power and aspiration and alpha maledom. So this article was talking about how many of the right-wing audience base for The Boys was waiting for a redemption arc for this character. That he's going through some problems. Yes, he was dating a Nazi, but we know that he'll make it up. But this season they've doubled down on the Trump metaphor that his character represents as he goes increasingly delusional, overthrows the previous CEO of the company and takes the reins of power for himself. And it's caused this backlash of the right-wing fan base saying, I'm really unhappy with the fact that my, alpha male Nazi figure is being criticized within season 3. So it is that kind of, what's interesting to me about that is that the original Superman was fighting Nazis, and here we have him very much about, he's a Nazi in everything but name.
Not only Nazis, but he also fought against the Ku Klux Klan. He and he's in like there's
Superman.
Superman did, yes, not Homelander. I can't imagine he would be too. I can't imagine he'd find much fault with the Ku Klux Klan. But and then there's also that ad where Superman is telling a bunch of kids that discriminating against anybody because of their ethnicity, their beliefs, or their religion is un-American. He's always stood for progressive views, and he's always been he's never been a right-wing figure in the slightest.
Look, I think my question is popular culture and national identities. So I do think if you think about the American way of life or standing for American virtues, Superman does have this association with America. And I guess my question is, are there other countries which have popular figures which are strongly linked to their national character? So Japan has a ton of cartoon characters, right? We've got Astro Boy, which is super dated now. I think, who watches Astro Boy? But we have Astro Boy, right? But he's not really a Japanese hero, you'd say, right? Or when people see Astro Boy, they think the Japanese way of life, right? Or Japanese virtues. What do you reckon? Are there popular figures like Ned Kelly? You could say, for some people in Australia, stands for an Australian identity, right? That kind of not larrikin. I can't remember any jokes that he makes, but maybe that final kind of such his life statement before he died. That kind of, but that kind of anti-establishment figure. That kind of like he fought the law and he robbed, and he's a kind of anti-establishment.
When we think about Ned Kelly, I think the thing that really appeals to the thing about Ned Kelly that really appeals to people is the whole sort of mateship thing. How he probably could have just run away from the cops at multiple points, but he always stood by to protect his friends or his family, even when it failed horribly for him. Which is very. There's a lot of myopia in that in his sense of morality, because he shot unarmed people a lot in cold blood to take their things. That stoicism. When he did find out he's going to be hanged, barely reacted to it. No, yeah, such is life.
I wonder, do people overseas know of Ned Kelly? If you were to ask a person from America, would they say, "Oh yeah, Ned Kelly"? He doesn't really have that. I mean, there was a Mick Jagger movie made back in the 70s, but I don't think that has legs.
I believe that they're aware of Ned Kelly, but he's not. He wouldn't be as huge as he is.
Not like Robin Hood, or
not
someone.
like Robin Hood, no. Because he is essentially the myth around him is similar to an Australian version of Robin Hood,
without the giving. He kind of supports his mates.
Yeah, he supports his mates. Yeah. So like it's a very self-centered variety of charity.
Yeah.
But thinking about other examples, because I mean, talking about Japan and Japanese heroes, I mean, the one that really springs to mind is Godzilla, just because
Yeah.
a lot of the time he is an anti-hero, and he's born from nuclear experiments.
Yep. Hiroshima, atomic bomb, a country that survived nuclear weaponry, and Godzilla symbolizes. In fact, in the 54 Godzilla, there's a scene where Godzilla's wreaking havoc on Tokyo, and we see a mother cradling her two young children, saying, soon we'll be with your father, who we imagine had died in World War II. And so this narrative of kind of a very dystopic, traumatic survival story coming out of massive, catastrophic apocalypse, the atomic bomb dropping that was there. Godzilla.
Godzilla for Japan, definitely.
Because I was thinking you were going to say Ultraman or Kamen Rider, but they don't really have a Japanese... I mean, Godzilla has a nice hook with Hiroshima and atomic bombs, and the idea of a discourse of Japan, of never again, and the atomic weapon brings danger and power, and passiveness, nuclear de-escalation is important, and I think that's there. But Ultraman, it doesn't stand for something like Superman.
No, although I mean, I guess the real recurring trope with Kamen Rider, or at least the Kamen Rider shows that I've watched, is that whoever is incumbent as the Kamen Rider of the day, like the main sort of, in the Showa era at least, in the 70s and the 80s, the main sort of motivation was making sure that children didn't get corrupted by whichever evil right-wing organization was trying to take over the world at the time. Because and
So
there's
kind of Cold War.
yeah, because there's that trope that because in I believe it's Kamen Rider versus Shocker, one of the first movies that came out during the original series. There's that moment where it's like on all the YouTube versions of him transforming. The thing he says right before transforming is, "I won't let you convert those children into cyborgs," and they redid that for the Kamen Rider 3 movie, which is an alternate universe where there was a third Kamen Rider as opposed to just the two in the original series. And when Kamen Rider Black appears, probably the most famous one after the OG in terms of staying power and cameos, he says that same line, says to Shocker, "I will not let you turn those children into cyborgs." It's just preventing children from getting cyberized is that I mean,
Look, Om Shinrikyo and the kind of idea of a cult organization in Japan that then did corrupt individuals to unleash horrible sarin gas attack in Tokyo subway systems was traumatic, I think, for Japan. Kamen Rider predates that. But I think you could say that there was a real concern of Manchurian Candidate kind of vibe.
When did that attack take place?
80s, like 83.
83, yeah. So I would say Kamen Rider Black, made and set in 1987 and 1988.
Right.
Golgum is a cult that is trying to corrupt all the children and the young adults in Japan, and it's up to Kotaro Minami, Kamen Rider Black, to make sure they don't get corrupted. Which invariably takes the place of he fights a guy in a rubber suit in the middle of nowhere, and that always results in him saving Japan.
Very interesting. Yeah. So we can certainly see popular culture exercising or working through or digesting political issues that are coming up in the real world, and pop culture, possibly in the case of Kamen Rider, providing a way to work that out. I feel like it's a good segue to my next story, which is some research from a while back. I've talked about it before on the show, but I want to revisit it again now, about do zombies scare Democrats and vampires spook Republicans? It was a study from the US talking about this mind-blowing way that it's not really research. From what I can tell, it's a guy and his blog that just did a content analysis, not really content analysis, just a release date analysis of vampire movies and zombie movies, and looked at when they launched, and were Democrat left-wing governments in power or were Republican right-wing governments in power, and is there a causal link between a left-wing government versus a right-wing government and the type of storytelling which is going on in horror movies?
Yeah, well, when I looked at the article that you sent me, I think there might be a study about it, but I tried to read the link, but weirdly it didn't work. So I
The
wasn't
best
aware-
research
Yeah.
leads down dead ends, because then you know you're doing the proper research where possibly someone's trying to prevent that message getting out and they're deleting links. Sorry, weird conspiracy theory mothership style, but yeah, it's always frustrating though when you're trying to track down sources of information. Very important with media literacy to look at the sources and track down where this information is coming from so you can fact check it yourself. And so we're going to talk about this story, but with a grain of salt, and say, look, we're trying to dig this story down deeper and think, what's the truth behind this alleged connection between pop culture and politics? But I think, as we've said, anecdotally, it makes sense. We've talked about Kamen Rider possibly being a reflection of the sarin gas attack, and God, there's so many, September 11, Twin Towers. Or films that kind of half reference that. The Star Trek Edge of Darkness film.
There's the original Spider-Man trilogy. There's that scene where the New Yorkers team up to fight the Green Goblin, and then one guy goes, "You mess with one of us, you mess with all of us."
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. These kind of New York coming together stories. Yeah, which were a direct reflection of the trauma that New York had gone through. With this one, it was vampires and zombies. We haven't been able to get the source, but we'll start a Kickstarter project to fund our research into it. We won't do that, but yeah. What have we thought? What have we put together so far, Zeke?
So I was reading the article, and although I couldn't find the study, they did have a graph, which I assume is from the study. Who knows? But so I looked at it, and I also did I'll come back to that in a second, but I did a quick search on Google after I was on YouTube, and I got an ad for a vampire movie. Which is very interesting. It's coming out later this year, called The Invitation.
Right, so we are in a left-wing democratic government in the US at the moment. So if this theory is holding water, then we should start seeing some vampire movies come up under the Biden government. So we are seeing a vampire movie get released this year.
There's a vampire movie. I did another quick Google search to see if there was any other. I just put vampire movies and went into the news feed to see if there was anything that was coming out. There was obviously The Invitation, and then there was also apparently a TV show coming to a streaming service. I think it's called Vampire Academy or something. But that's another piece of content in the media that's coming out. And then I checked zombie movies, and nothing came up. No TV shows, no movies or anything. So that does seem to kind of corroborate the idea.
So if we unpack why this might be the case, an article back in, when did this come out? In 2019, so this is the latest discussion of this very topic, spoke to a philosophy blogger. We should probably reach out to our own philosophy bloggers. Do we have any? We'll find them. So anyway, this philosophy blogger S. Peter Davis, who talked about dominant movie monsters reflecting the fears of the party that's out of power, right? So the important thing to realize here is that these monsters are reflecting the fears of those who aren't in power at the moment, right? So zombie movies symbolize what scares progressives, right? And vampires stand for what conservatives are anxious about. So this theory goes on to say that zombie movies are seen by progressives, or zombies are seen by progressives as being ultimate conformists, right? They all act the same. They all move together in swarms. They all mindlessly attack anybody who's different, and they force anyone in sight to become one of them, right? The zombie thing. And, I guess you could draw a bow and say, yeah, some of that does resonate with the criticism the left has made of Trump supporters, that they are all acting the same. They all move together in swarms, and particularly with the news coming out of the hearings with the, the hearings about the
Capitol riot.
Attempted insurrection, the Capitol riot. Mindlessly attacking anybody who's different and forcing anyone in sight to become one of them. So that's the zombie. So if we look at vampires, though, so this is the period we should be in at the moment. Vampires are about the opposite extreme. They're enemies. They're seen by conservatives. So vampires are seen by conservatives as enemies of the normal. As this political blogger points out, vampires are the ultimate deviants, right? They hate religion, right? So yeah, vampires hate religion. So conservatives might be positioning liberals or left-wing political people as hating religion. Vampires also obviously hate religion. They're vulnerable to holy water and crucifixes. They seek bizarre pleasures. I guess vampires seek bizarre pleasures, right? There's always that kind of orgy room that a vampire might have, or harem of women. I'm trying to remember.
That's actually you just reminded me of another example of a story about someone seeking violent pleasures coming out during Conservative government. Hellraiser coming out in the late 1980s at the height of the Reagan and Thatcher administrations, about a bunch of sadomasochistic demons who are trying to find the ultimate filthy, dirty pleasures.
That's right. And they are deviants, right? And yeah, it would be interesting to look at what the political system was in power. Where was that British or American?
It was, I believe,
it was Clive Barker, right? So American.
No, Clive Barker's British.
Oh, British. So it is.
But nonetheless, both administrations were right wing. That was Thatcher and Reagan.
Yeah. So it should be, yeah.
It was Thatcher, wasn't it? Let me ask Mr. Google that. Sorry.
So we have vampires seek bizarre pleasures. There are two other things that vampires do. They skulk around at night, seducing others into their weird ways. And they have strange foreign names and accents. Look, in some ways, the right's criticism of some climate change activists, right, seems to be that kind of also directed. Maybe I'm drawing too much of a bow. So anyway, the article goes on to say, maybe vampires reflect the right's fear of progressivism, undermining traditional and self-control.
The thing about vampires as well, though, is that they also represent a lot of fears to progressives as well, just because they're very much they tend to be they're old money. They hoard wealth and property. Dracula's had his castle for goodness knows how long. Then there's the Cullens in Twilight, who are definitely an old money clan.
Well, yeah, and Bram Stoker's original Dracula is that fear of the Eastern European old money, old world figure coming to the new industrial England. So there's a lot of xenophobia wrapped up within the vampire motif, certainly the Dracula motif.
No, you certainly do have a point with them being terrifying to conservatives, because the ultimate horror from the original Dracula is this creepy Eastern European man is coming to corrupt and violate our women, which is one of the ultimate conservative fears.
Yes. So it's an interesting idea, and checking somewhere like IMDb, as Zach's been looking at, or whatever the movie release date searching engine you were performing. That does show that this model maybe is predicting vampire movies and zombie movies coming out, or at least outnumbering. Like there's suddenly a glut coming through of a particular type of film. Throughout the Obama administration, this article says that vampire movies did outnumber zombie movies, and during the Trump administration, zombie media seemed to be making a comeback. I think Walking Dead was pre-Trump, but.
Oh, hold on a second. I would dispute that, because a lot of the really big zombie stuff did come out during the Obama administration. So you had, Warm Bodies, The Last of Us, Zombieland, but the vampire stuff that was my knuckle cracking. The zombie stuff the vampire stuff rather that did come out greatly dwarfed. Hold on a second. Sorry, I think I've gotten confused here. So it's liberals who are scared of zombies. Yeah, because
that's right. Yeah.
Sorry, I got mixed up, because I keep thinking about Twilight, which was one of the biggest media juggernauts of the late 2000s, early 10s, when Obama was in power, when the Democrats were in power.
Yeah, and that would hold weight with that idea of representing a disenfranchised conservative audience that are fearing the power, the political group that has power at that time, which is left-wing vampires. It's interesting. I mean, look, and I think some of those are shared by both parties. I think both parties fear conformism or conformity, or accuse both parties of having conformity. Yeah, look, do we suspect it holds water? Is it a space through which to talk about politics? I mean, I guess at the moment it's interesting in the US because we have court that's making decisions on abortion and so forth.
Oh, yeah, Roe v. Wade.
Roe v. Wade, which is very conservative, right?
Yeah.
So in a way, there's a real polarization of power occurring where you have, yes, you do have a left-wing government in the US with Biden and the Democrats, but you have a court system, a Supreme Court, which is full of conservatives who are actually exercising their power, and in many ways that power seems to be greater than the government's. Both with today, I think it was the announcement of them with environmental legislation around coal industries, knocking back some of the progressive reforms of the Biden administration. So it seems, both across climate change and abortion, the Supreme Court in the US is wielding conservative power in such a real way. So we might see, I reckon, hybrid zombie vampire movies. Movies with the vampire is a zombie, or the zombie is a vampire.
I'd like to see a class war between rich aristocratic vampires fighting a bunch of downtrodden blue-collar zombies who live in the slums.
Because we've had Underworld, which had the werewolves v vampires.
Yeah, so I was just thinking about that movie, actually. I was trying to remember whether that was zombies or werewolves.
Where are the werewolves? Are they the Green Party?
Potentially. I mean, no, they're the Animal Rights Party.
Yeah. The dog lovers.
The other thing that really stands out for me is that zombies were never not political, because the what is generally seen as, the first movie where zombies are treated as we know them in pop culture, Night of the Living Dead, was all about race relations in America in the 1960s.
It has that great scene at the end, spoiler alert, for quite an old movie, George Romero's. The fact that the black main character, survivor at the end, the one who's really able to save and rescue the remaining survivors, is then killed by a hillbilly who's cleaning up zombies and possibly mistakes this black guy is a zombie and just shoots him, even though he's a human. Quite direct, explicit commentary about racial hate. Within that, and again, I guess this is a zombie motif, that the real villains in a zombie film are often other humans, their own racist or ideological shortcomings.
Yeah, there's also the a part of that in that movie. I think it's that movie. Is that it's about consumerism as well, is another aspect.
No, that was Dawn of the Dead.
Which is part of Romero's trilogy. So it is part of the... That's why I got confused, because I remembered the name, but I couldn't remember the name of the movie. But yeah, that one's about consumerism as well, which is more tackling evil corporations and the whole capitalist machine. Mindless consumerism, because it's set predominantly in a huge shopping mall. And you see a lot of the humans who have become zombies basically still looking like normal consumers. They're just kind of drawn to consumerism. And the idea is, it's again quite a biting satire on a criticism of consumerism being mindless.
I think there's a line in that movie as well where obviously they go into the mall and then they start to give in to consumerism. And one of the characters, or at least multiple, it's at least one of them, looks out at the zombies and just says the line, I think, "We're the same," or like something similar to that effect, of really on the nose, just basically this is consumerism and we're giving into it.
Yeah, how alive are we really? Yeah. Well, so in Australia, though, I don't think, that political similarity... we were talking about it before. Utopia seems to be one of the series which is lampooning politics, or Yes Minister from the UK, or In the Thick of It. But I find it intriguing looking at films where there's some slippage. You're not expecting to have a debate about conservative or progressive values, but is a zombie movie or a vampire movie really a neutral space where people can debate progressive and conservative political ideologies without it being drawn down to you're a Trump supporter or a Biden supporter in the US case, or in Australia, a Liberal or Labor supporter. You can instead, talk about zombies and vampires in hopefully a less scarring way.
Well, I mean, you'd hope so, because they often can be quite traumatizing. I mean, I don't think many people walked away from The Last of Us Part 2 without having teared up at one point.
But also I think sometimes talking about what your political view is, maybe many Australians don't like to talk about their political view, like their salary or something. I think that's changing, but zombie movies and vampire movies might provide a way to talk about political issues without having to say, and I want you to be a, political affiliation X person.
See, the only zombie movie that I can think of that was made and released in Australia, the only one that I can think of is Me and My Mates versus the Zombie Apocalypse.
I've not seen that one.
I don't think it had a very wide release, but I remember seeing the trailer at a convention about 6 years ago and thinking it looked incredible. And I still haven't seen it because I haven't been able to locate a copy.
What's it called? Me and My
Mates versus the Zombie Apocalypse, which is about a bunch of blue collar manual laborers fighting the zombie apocalypse.
Where was it filmed?
Oh, I don't know. I'm gonna ask Mr. Google right now, because it looked incredible. It had a real sort of Shaun of the Dead energy, but very, very larrikin, very Australian, and it looked like it didn't sort of delve into 2015. It came out. It was where was it filmed? I'm just having a look at that one for you right now. Oh my gosh, I'm having a look at that one for you right now. That's what I used to say when I worked in a call center. That was my ultimate stalling for time technique. It was crowdfunded through Indiegogo, and it was filmed in Canberra.
Oh wow! Talking of politics and pop culture, Canberra. I mean, that's ground zero. So
and that's where I saw it being advertised, was at a convention that was located in Canberra.
Wow. Okay, so that again, politics, zombies, so maybe. So our homework is to have a look at that film, see if it's on Stan or somewhere. I don't know. We'll see if we can track it down, and in the future do a movie review of political reading of this film.
Me and My Mates versus the Zombie Apocalypse. It just has the best title.
It has a nice title
for a zombie movie.
Any final words wrapping up today's show on Superman, zombies, and vampires?
That sounds like a really good graphic novel by Alan Moore.
Thank you, Marcus. Thank you, Zeke, for joining Media Tackle's Media Mothership for another week. This has been Dr. Craig Norris, and keep listening to Edge Radio. More exciting news and, not news, music coming up now from Adrian.
You so going down a different road. You call me late at night, I pick up every time. Wish that I could rewind, get some peace of mind. Shut up, don't wanna hear it, now I'm fed up. Wish I could say it was enough to make me walk away. And I'm messed up, cause every time I start to get up, and know my head feels fucked up.